So we were trying to test if crowdfunding was a viable option for some of our clients to use as a fundraising source. Some kind of hit and miss stuff. So we did an experiment and found what we thought were the best 5 pros and cons of crowdfunding as a whole. So I just thought I'd share those with you. The first pro to crowdfunding is it's very easy to set up. Compared to a normal fundraising system where you have prospects and you gotta go talk to people and you get to find case for support, all this stuff. Building the site itself and using a platform like Indiegogo or GoFundMe or Fundly, or we have a blog that kind of compares all of them if you're not sure which one to use, but all those sites are pretty user-friendly and you don't have to have a lot of computer experience to get it set up. So that was a huge help, I thought. Number 2 is just the total volume of people that you could reach. Obviously we talk about fundraising being a one-to-one business as much as we can, because that's where the big gifts are. But if you are trying to get in front of a few more people or just use this as one new donor capture system, a new lever to pull, you can get quite a few people. We've had people who are not even in the towns that the nonprofits are based in just randomly donate because they thought the cause was compelling. It wasn't a lot, like $25 here, $50 there, but you have a pretty wide reach of people pretty much immediately for very low cost, and we thought that was pretty effective. And that leads me right into number 3, which is low cost. In terms of dollars in and dollars out, the ratio is pretty good. Now the volume is not that high because the output, some of our biggest campaigns were like maybe $50,000 and they were a lot of work. So there is the hidden cost of like the staff time it takes and the energy and the promotion and all of that. But in terms of what it costs to actually set it up, they're not bad. They do take a platform fee, like a lot of them take 1% or 3% or so much per transaction or whatever, and that's how they make their money. But for the most part, you're not having to invest a lot up front, particularly to get started. So as kind of a low barrier of entry way to get started, pretty good option. Number 4 is you get pretty good feedback right away on whatever you're trying to promote. So there's no better way of seeing if your marketing works or seeing if your messaging works than to test it with a bunch of people and see how it resonates. So where it might take 4 or 5 or 10 different donors sitting down one-on-one, asking them about a project or doing a feasibility study or something, for crowdfunding, you get feedback right away on what people are most excited about, what most resonates with them. So it's a good way to crowdsource not just money, but information too. The last piece that we found to be pretty effective, especially for those who are more regional charities, a little bit more spread out, you get a decent amount of community building out of it. People can kind of hear updates. It kind of has this like Discord or Reddit or online forum feel to it. So it allows the donors to, even in small amounts, $5, $10, $25, connect with each other. So not a huge perk, but we did see that as kind of an advantage there, and definitely thought we'd mention it as our 5th pro. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you're ready to level up your fundraising program, Pride Philanthropy might be able to help. Our team helps raise over $100 million per year for dozens of clients all over the country. We train staff and volunteers, conduct feasibility studies, and manage multi-year campaigns. If you're looking for outside help to kickstart your program or rejuvenate your efforts, you can book a free 30-minute call with one of our experts to see if you qualify as a client of Pride. Visit pridephilanthropy.com or click the link below, and we'll see you over there. Okay, and we had to talk about the bad if we're gonna talk about the good. So we're not a huge fan of this as your primary funding source, and here are the 5 biggest reasons why. Number 1 is it requires a ton of effort. I kind of mentioned this before, but the amount of effort that goes into this versus what you get out of it, the ratio is not good. Now, the money in versus money out is pretty good, but in terms of your time, very, very difficult. The setup is not that long, but like the keeping up with the donations and then all the follow-up, and if you offer perks at certain levels, there's so much labor that goes into it, whereas you could spend that same time and energy, whether it's paid staff or volunteers or whatever, and just go ask for gifts outright in larger amounts, and you're probably gonna be better off. So for that reason, not a great option as a place to start necessarily. The second reason we don't really recommend this as a strategy for most people is it's a little bit of a dice roll, whereas peer-to-peer fundraising and talking to folks is 90 plus, 95% plus likely to get you good funding for your cause. This is a bit of a gamble. Like, you can set the whole thing up, you can spend all this time, and you could get nothing, or you could get a couple $100 for all of your efforts, whereas it would be just as good for you to go to McDonald's and get an hourly job and donate that money, and the same effort would have been for the same $200 that you made. Because it's a pretty saturated market, there's a lot of people competing, and it's kind of pay to play in terms of the ad and the promotion of it. you're not going to necessarily get out of it what you think if it flops. There's a chance that it just doesn't work, and that's really defeating. And especially if you sink a bunch of time into it, having a zero return on something, even a chance at a zero return, is really, really tough. Number 3, and I kind of touched on this a little bit already, is the market saturation is super high, and this can be a super competitive field. Whereas if you're sitting down with a donor, you're not really competing for that many nonprofits. They may have a few charities that they like to support in their portfolio, but for the most part, you're kind of on your own. It's kind of you and the cause and the donor, and you have this like small concentric circle of trust. But the problem with crowdfunding is the people who are on these crowdfunding platforms, even if they see your specific post on Facebook, they're being served all of these different other missions to be scaled in different ways and help these people here and help these kids and help these animals. So you're in kind of a full marketplace where you're competing with all of the other merchants as opposed to going one-on-one and selling something in someone's office, essentially. All right, number 4, the thing that we did not like about this process was how little control we had over everything. Once you kind of set it up, there's not a lot you can do with it. You can drive traffic to that site, but you might as well be driving traffic to your own site where you get 100% of the donations as opposed to going to the campaign site. So once the campaign is up and running in a crowdfunding site, there's just not that much you can do with it. And we really struggled to make new impact other than just be like, well, can we get someone local to promote it? Or can we get them to promote it? Once you've kind of set it up, you're at the behest of that platform. And is it going to be successful or not? I don't know. You don't have a lot of control. And the final reason we would say probably don't want to do crowdfunding is it's just not a sustainable model for long-term revenue. Again, maybe a quick injection for something, maybe a year-end, a holiday appeal, a one-time something or other. But in terms of this is my funding strategy, it's just not going to be sustainable long-term. It's too difficult. It's too much of a dice roll. All these reasons that we talked about. The most important thing is you want to find revenue streams for your charity that give you longevity, that you can repeat over and over and over again so that you can not only do what you're already doing repeatedly, but then grow and scale your mission up so you can serve even more people, even more animals, even more kids, even whatever your mission is. For the fact that it's not scalable or repeatable in a kind of meaningful way, not necessarily the best. So that's our pros and cons list for crowdfunding. If I had to give it an overall score, I'd say, C-, maybe a passing grade, but just barely. Not necessarily the first and best way to do it, but at least that gives you some information about what's good and what's bad, and you can kind of make a decision for if it's right for your charity or not. Does your nonprofit need a more customized solution to reach its fundraising goals? You can get more information on how we might be able to help by going to pridephilanthropy.com or clicking the link in the video description.